Welcome to another episode of the Application Security Podcast. This is Robert Hurlbut, Threat Modeling Architect, and I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Romeo. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Robert. Chris Romeo, CEO of Security Journey and lover of all things application security. I'm trying to give myself a new tagline here. I don't know if it worked or not.
I think it worked. I think I like that. I do. And today we have special guest, Charles Shirer.
There you go.
I want to make sure I say it right. Charles, thank you for joining us today.
Oh my God, thank you for having me. Just want to start off with saying I'm a huge fan of the show.
Excellent.
So I constantly listen to you guys all the time.
Excellent.
I'm a podcast addict.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Well, as you know then, as a frequent listener of our podcast, we like to first ask our guests, what's your security origin story? How did you get into this crazy world of security and application security in particular?
All right, I'm going to do a rewind. All right, so here's how I got into security. So I started out as just a computer guy. I was just a huge fan of, and I kind of did it backwards because most folks, they start out on Windows. I actually started out in the Linux world and then kind of worked my way like backwards insanely, right? So I started out with Mandrake, not Mandrivia, Mandrake.
That's old school.
8.2, yes. That was my first Linux. Mandrake 8.2, it had 6 CDs, right? And it had an extra floppy so you can, I guess, kind of like the boot floppy. So just in case if something goes wrong, you were good to go, right? And I actually bought that from Best Buy for $39. Yeah, they actually sold Linux in the store. $39.
Well,
So
what year was this? Is this 1987 or
This
something?
is
Right.
no. This is actually year 2000. Yeah, the year 2000. So I bought it and I said, okay, cool, because I wanted to learn how like dual booting worked and everything else, because I had Windows XP Home, and I was like, okay, and I was reading up from IRC, of course, how to do like dual booting, and I was like, and I downloaded Partition Magic 6.0 through dial-up, and yeah, so that took a couple of days. But once those couple of days were up, I downloaded it, and I was like, why do I need this fat partition? So I deleted it, and when I rebooted, all I had was a command line with Linux. So then I'm rushing back and forth to another computer. Hey, how do I do this in Linux? I'm in the Ethernet channel, and it's like, type start X, and they would help me get on the internet for starters. And then I learned a little bit of how Linux worked. Needed a LIN modem instead of a WIN modem. And I got into it from there. And then, of course, I moved on to Slackware. That was my next Linux. And, of course, Red Hat 7.2, which is the last real Red Hat. I just want to plug that in there. Then I had an epiphany. I had my first firewall out of a garage. It was the old garage sale. So the lady just gave it away. It was an old 486 with the turbo button.
All right.
And I put OpenBSD 3.0 because that was the first time they were using PF, which we all know today as pfSense, right? So with PF, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I was like, okay, I'm learning the command line and everything. I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. Then I found out about FreeBSD. So I started out with FreeBSD 4.8, and then I just started learning about different operating systems. And then, of course, my first, and this is all like during the college period. I didn't even have a job yet. All I cared about was just playing with computers, learning SED, learning awk, scripting in Corn Shell, which I still do to this day. I still use Corn Shell. From there, when I got my first job, I got into Novell NetWare. Novell NetWare 3.12, which was bind, and then I moved on to 4.1. What was amazing, the way I got into that, because at the time I was a PC tech, and I made cables and did all the network drops and everything. And what I wound up doing, the guy that was an email administrator, his I guess wife was in the military and they had to move. So the boss comes to me with a Novell book in one hand, a group-wise book in the other hand, puts it on my table, says, "You are now the new email administrator. Don't screw up." So that was my intro into getting into like learning about the basics of like securing operating systems and actually securing, directory services at the time. It was NDS at the time that moved to eDirectory, and then of course eventually Active Directory. But that was kind of like my intro into like secure. Now I'm in charge of other people's data. And now I'm like, okay, how do I harden OSs? So that was kind of like the intro, even though it wasn't called InfoSec and everything else. It was just me learning how to lock down the operating system from Windows to Novell. And then eventually I got moved over to Solaris. And that was my baby for a long time. And I became a Solaris engineer and everything else. And just been a huge Unix fan ever since. Even still to this day, my desktop is FreeBSD. I still use Ubuntu. I still use Sedinok. I'm a Vi guy. I mean,
so that means you have an editor. You have an editor open that you can't get out of, is what you're saying.
Sounds like Emacs is in the room.
No. That's my only VI joke. I only have one VI joke, and so I went for
it. But even with all of that, and what really, my first job as a penetration tester, I got into wireless penetration testing. So I was a huge fan of learning about wireless and WEP, WPA2, Zigbees, Bluetooth, and I was literally trying to buy like every antenna I could get my hands on, and shout out to Zero Chaos. He kind of pointed me in the right direction and looking at the OSWP, which is offered by Offensive Security. And once I took that, that kind of really like opened the door for like, security related jobs or whatnot. So that was kind of like my intro into everything. And of course, I was still going to security conferences. I was still doing local talks. I was still like trying to mentor and help others who wanted to, even though I didn't have that much security experience, I did have a lot of experience as a sysadmin and a systems engineer. So I wanted to help others get into that realm. So it was just all about me being a computer guy. I never really looked at it as like cyber and all these different like titles and everything else. It was just me with my passion for computers in general. And that's how I got into security.
Very cool. Very cool. So I have a question about C# here. And we're kind of switching gears. But
yeah.
I want to say, just before I get there, you mentioned FreeBSD. I can remember back in 2002, 2003 or so. Everybody talks about .NET Core. Hey, we can run it on Mac now. We can run it on Linux. Back then, there was a project called Rotor. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I've heard of that.
I got it, and I installed it on FreeBSD, and I ran .NET on FreeBSD back in the early 2000s. So I remember that. Using
that was huge.
Learning, yeah. And then, of course, they kind of scrapped it, and then years later, it now sort of reappeared as .NET Core, more or less, running on Mac and Linux and so forth. Just kind of funny how it all sort of came around here.
There was a lot of nostalgia in Charles' explanation here. All those things he was saying, I was like, yep. He's from the same generation that I am in computing.
Making cables. A lot of Twizzlers, Red Bull, and just sitting there and making crossover cables and cables for the network engineers. Yeah.
So my C# question, how did you get C# to run in the web browser?
Oh, my goodness. So, a little backstory on that. So, again, I do a lot of web app pen testing as well. Mm-hmm. And I just made it up in my mind. I said, you know what? I really want to dig into these browsers. Browsers are popping up all over the place. I think we're, and this is just in my mindset. I said, as a community, I don't think we're digging deep enough at the browser. Like, we focus so much on the server side and everything else, and even with cloud and specific apps and, now APIs. But nobody, it's like the browser was like forgotten, right? So I was like, you know what? Let me start digging into that. And it's got to be a way where you can actually hide things inside the browser. So I was doing a lot of research and I ran across WebAssembly, right? So I was like, oh man, this is pretty cool, WebAssembly. And I was doing a lot more research, and I noticed that you can compile Rust, which is another language I use now to this day as well too. Rust programming language, you can actually run Rust inside of the browser. So I was like, well, if it can run Rust, it's got to be able to run some other languages too. And at the time, I was getting into hacking Active Directory, learning a little bit of red teaming, and just C# was the way to go because a lot of folks were catching, of course, on PowerShell. So a lot of attackers were moving over to C#. So I said, I wonder if I could get C# to run in the browser. And long and behold, I was able to get it to run in the browser using WebAssembly to compile the language and getting it to run. And I can show, I got my notes in a notepad because I kept that. I was like, oh, this is huge. I got it to run. But that's how I was able to get it to run. You can run C# in your browser by compiling it through WebAssembly. So WebAssembly is a little bit faster than JavaScript, but and just for certain instances, but that's how I was able to actually get it run in a nutshell.
What was the use case there? Was it like web shells, like dropping a web shell or something?
That was the goal. That's still the goal. Because what I wanted to do, because like with the browser, it runs in a sandbox. So my goal, and still is my goal, is actually because of reading through a lot of the Edge documentation, is actually being able to say, hey, let me run my C# code in here. If it's running on check to see if it's running a version of Windows, whatever version of Windows is actually running, and see if I can break out of the sandbox and maybe run OS level commands from the browser. So that was my reason for thinking like, okay, how can I do different things within the browser that can, that I can bypass certain things, because again, if you're, nobody looks in the browser for anything. Well, I'm not saying now they don't, but at that time, nobody was really paying attention to the browser like that. Yeah. Because if you go back, think about it, 10, 15 years ago, it was all about the perimeter.
Yep.
Web applications wasn't really getting that, attention. Because if you had the best firewall, you had the best Cisco firewall and all your, like the VLAN tagging and everything else in place, nobody cared about the web app. And that's how a lot of attackers were getting in, was through the web app. If you were able to phish, the early stages of phishing, if you were able to get somebody to click on the JavaScript link and whatever your JavaScript did, and you was able to do browser hooking and everything else, even before beef, you were in.
Yeah.
And it was legitimate traffic according to the firewall because it's port 80 or port 443.
Yep.
So
that's very cool. That's very cool. I want to transition now and kind of get to the story behind how we got to this interview. And so about, I don't know, it's probably 6 months or a year ago or so. Robert and I we're both huge Twitter people, and we're probably on it too much, but we could debate what too much actually accounts for.
Hey, we all have addictions.
I'm watching, and I start to see these videos popping up. People that I follow are liking these videos, and I'm like, there's this guy on here, and he's wearing a T-shirt, and he's like, looks pretty happy. So I'm like, I play one of these videos, and I'm like, this guy is just the most positive security person I've ever met in my life. He's encouraging me, and like he's encouraging our whole community. And so before I even ask you about this, Charles, I'm gonna play one of these for our audience.
Okay, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, happy Fantastic Friday from the BSD Bandit. Ow! Hope everyone is enjoying their morning. I definitely am. I'm super excited to live to see another day. But before I sit down and drink my morning coffee, just want to stop by and say that I love you all. Let's live it up and enjoy the day and each other. Remember, help someone, digitally hug someone. And as you all know, my Follow Friday is the entire hacker community. Keep on doing great things. Keep on spreading love. Keep on just being awesome. Yeah. Well, that's my time. I love y'all all. And I got to leave y'all with something. And this song was playing in my head like literally this morning. So this is going to be my Friday right here. Yes. Yes. I love y'all. Have a good day. Later. Yep, yep.
All right, so now you've had a chance, audience, to hear what what drew me to Charles. And so I reached out to him a few weeks ago and said, I gotta ask this guy some questions. So the first thing is, how would you describe these videos that you do? Like, what is your motivation behind them?
Well, okay, so, and this was literally right before the pandemic hit. So, I was looking on Twitter one day and I just noticed that it was just a lot of just like negative stuff going on. You know, of course, everything that was going on out in the real world. And then I noticed a lot of the InfoSec community in general and developers as well, too, tech in general. It was just all just like negative. Oh, why am I here? I'm going through stuff. And people were depressed, suicide. I mean, it was pretty bad. And at first I started tweeting out just words and I was like, what am I doing? It's the age of video. So I wanted to encourage people, because I have a passion for people and helping others. And I tied that into I call it the hacker lifestyle. And I truly believe in the hacker lifestyle. So more so is like, you don't accept things just the way they are. You change them. So I saw there was a lot of negativity. So I said, you know what? I'm going to reverse it. I'm excited. The reason for my excitement, it doesn't take much. Like, I'm living my dream job. I get to do what I love to do for a living each day. It don't get no sweeter than that, you know? So I figured, you know what? If I can help someone else, even if it's just a little bit, like, hey, you can make it too. You can get to that next level. Greatness awaits you. If it don't challenge you, it don't change you. You know, just keep people motivated to just make it through one more day. You know, and that was the reason behind like the videos. That's what motivated the videos. Now with the t-shirts, I'm a huge fan of retro. So I kind of combined everything and just said, you know what? I'm a huge fan of retro and I want to actually bring that into the fold, because retro, when we look at a video game, we look at it takes us back to a time where it's like the simplest of times. So I said, you know what? Let's incorporate that as well, too. So that's why I started wearing the different t-shirts, because it's symbolic to just say, you know, these are simpler times. Let's just get out there. Like, if you're up and you're breathing, you're winning. It's a bonus. Get out there and do what you love. Or if you're in a position where you're not doing what you love right now, work towards doing something that you love.
Yeah.
But that's the end goal.
How many shirts? Because I swear I don't see the same shirt. And you may have snuck it in after a period of time, but how many t-shirts are in your closet, your wardrobe, whatever?
And this is the first time I'm saying this live.
Well, we got a scoop here, folks. Pay attention. There's a scoop coming up here.
Let's mark this out, yeah.
I'm actually at 310 t-shirts.
Wow.
This is a look of surprise. This is a genuine look of surprise on my face.
310 t-shirts.
I've been to so many conferences, and I have maybe a drawer full or two, but I don't have that many.
Because I've been doing the t-shirts for like a year or so now. So it's different t-shirts every day. Yeah.
Wow. So you are. I didn't know that you were actually doing a different t-shirt. I thought there was a rotation somewhere, and I was just missing it. Wow. Do you have a room in your house?
Yeah, the closet back there, that's full of t-shirts. That huge closet around the corner.
Oh, that's so cool.
So that's full of like t-shirts and my retro Mega Man stuff, 'cause I'm a huge Mega Man fan and Final Fantasy fan.
That's so cool. It's encouraging just to see like a different t-shirt and stuff. But I wanna unpack this even a little bit deeper, because I've been in security for almost 25 years at this point. Mm-hmm. Robert's been around the world of security for a long time as well. And after hearing your origin story, you have as well. Mm-hmm. And we don't meet a lot of positive people in our business. And I'm not trying to be, insensitive or anything. It's just this business that we're in, we're always picking apart the negative. It's just it's what we get paid to do. And so I'm just like, how do you get this positivity like in a world where if I asked 10 security people, if I said, hey, we got 10 security people here, I'd be like, we probably got 9.5 people are negative, and there's a half a person that's like once in a while. But you're bringing a different energy to it, and I'm just curious, like, how do you do that, and do you bring that into your work as well, like as a pen tester? Are you a positive pen tester?
Yes. Shout out to Red Siege. That's where I work. Tim Medine. Yeah. So each day, like I said, I get excited to, like, 'cause this is something I've always wanted to do. I didn't even know it was going to be called InfoSec. I was just into computers, and each day I get to do something new that I actually enjoy, and you get paid to do that. How sweet! It doesn't get any sweeter. And then the thing is, it's just like, I always look at it this way. Be truly appreciative, because remember, it can all be gone in a second. So I truly appreciate every opportunity or every place that I've ever gotten an opportunity to work with or whoever, right? Because again, it can all be gone in a second. So I look at the simplicity. It's the simplicity, because you don't have, like, in this industry, it's not a right that we're here. It's we have that privilege of being in security. We have the privilege of working with, if you're a coder, you have a privilege to work on a specific app or a specific project. These are all privileges. You get to wake up and breathe. Everything else is a bonus.
Yep.
So I always keep that mindset no matter what's going on. Because again, everybody has problems. Yeah, you have problems, but the key is how you approach it. Because again, you still got to face the problem, but do you want to face it in a negative attitude, or do you want to keep it in a positive light? That's the choice that you control. I just chose the positive side as opposed to just being negative. And that is inspired by, I grew up in New York. Thank you for all the Wall Street people that never smiled when I was going to school. And then they had the same facial expression when I was coming home from school. And I never wanted to be that kind of adult.
Wow. No, it makes sense. I mean, I think we need more positivity in our industry. I think people burn out in InfoSec for a lot of different reasons. And that's a real thing, because we're in jobs that are high stress, and we work a lot of hours, and there's a lot of other things that are happening there. But some of it's got to be because of our general mindset, though. If it's got to be, being more positive it can't do anything but make us a little bit more resilient, a little bit less burning out, just because we're taking all that weight upon us, you know?
Mm-hmm. Like, take a break, for example, right? If you're feeling burned out, take a break. It could be your favorite television show. Take like 30 minutes if you need to. Or if you want to go see something outside, take a walk outside. But fixate your mind on something that you really enjoy for like 30 minutes. And you'd be surprised. Just walk away from the problem, come back. You'd be surprised how refreshed you are, and how you'll be able to tackle the problem. Or if there's no problem, how you can actually make it through the rest of the day.
Yeah, I've had that experience many times. Like, I'm not a great coder, but I do code it sometimes, and I've had that experience. Or even trying to fix a problem, you know, you're like, you sit there for 8 hours, and you're like just ready to scream into the wall. You get up, you go, and then you come back the next morning, and like 5 minutes later, you're like, oh, look at that, it's right in front of me.
And that's the beauty part of it. Again, like I said, with coding, let's use coding as an example, right? And you know, I see a lot on Twitter where people say they have imposter syndrome, right? But here's the thing about that, right? It's just like, hey, you're not where you used to be. You're moving along in your career.
Yeah.
No, you got to look at it as a mindset like, hey, I may not be able to do what you can do right now, but I guarantee you, if I stick around and keep working at it, I will get there.
Yeah.
You know, none of us are born with a TCP/IP manual. We're just not. Let's be realistic.
Luckily, we're not born.
I know, right?
That thing weighs like 10 pounds.
We're not born like what? Right? We're not born like what? Packets. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is something that and there's always going to be somebody that knows a little bit more, and there's always going to be somebody that knows a little bit less. But that doesn't make them less.
Yeah.
or the person more. And that's the mindset that I hope people get when they say, oh, I have imposter syndrome. No, you deserve to be there. You belong.
Yep.
So that's the mindset I try to impute in folks each day.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I'm someone who watches the videos, so like I love this idea. And when you think about, you know, imposter syndrome and stuff,
Yeah.
you know, one of the things that it's crazy. I've gotten a chance to speak at a lot of different big conferences and things, and in the early days of speaking, I used to be deathly afraid. Like one of my friends, when I worked back at Cisco, dragged me basically into a speaking engagement where I'm like, nope, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do it. But you know, the thing that where I flipped the switch in my career, and I'm just going to share this. I don't know, maybe it'll help somebody somewhere. When I flipped the switch in my career, I realized I don't really care what the people in the room think about me. Because 10% of the people in the room are going to think I'm the smartest person on earth. 10% are going to think I'm the dumbest person on earth. And the other 80% of people, they're just going to listen and they're going to come along for the ride. And it was that moment where I just said, you know what? I'm not going to care anymore. I cared about when I stand up to speak, it's very, you know, it's an honor and I put a lot of preparation into it. But I'm like, the people in this room don't define me. They don't determine the value in what I am, what I'm doing or whatever. And when that happened, when I flipped that switch though, you look at that room and it's totally different. Because I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm like, go ahead, laugh at me. Do it. I love it. I'll laugh with you. Like, you know, that's fine. I'm not, it's not gonna change who I am as a person. And that's really for me in the point in my career, I was like, I'm not like, I can stand in front of 500 people now because laugh. Maybe I'll fall and trip on the stage. We'll all laugh. It'll be a good day. Someone will have a little bit of happiness because they'll be like, remember that guy tripped on that stage? It was hilarious.
There you go.
But that's just a little bit from my perspective of my background, kind of thinking through how I process that. But we got to talk about this podcast you're doing now.
Let's do this.
The Positively Blue Team. I didn't catch that until now. The Positively Blue Team cast. All right, so tell us about this, and we're going to put notes there'll be stuff in the show notes, links so people can find it as well. But tell us about this. Like, what would I experience if I catch an episode of this podcast?
So what you'll get, and we talk about various different topics from a positive perspective in the industry. Like last week we talked about policy because I'm also a former threat hunter.
Okay,
so that's how I learned a lot about how like with defense and everything else. So which helps me as a red teamer and penetration tester. So with the Positively Blue Team, my castmate Understudy 77. He actually does defense. He's 100% defensive. The positive comes from me, and that's how we got the name. He's Blue Team, I'm positive, and he's positive as well, too. But what you'll catch in this episode is 30 minutes of actual content that we talk about policies. We've talked about red teaming and blue teaming, but we always keep it at 30 minutes because we don't want to lose the audience just kind of like all over the place, right?
Yep.
So we come in and we make it fun. It's like, hey, you got 2 minutes to introduce yourself. Go! And we just and we make it fun and just interesting that way. And then we talk about the different topics within a 30-minute span. And that's how we wrap up our shows. But we do it from that standpoint. So it's not 100% red. It's not blue. It can be the week before we had recruiters. How to work with recruiting when you're looking for a job. On Positively Blue Team. So we talk about different aspects. We're going to talk about web apps. We're in episode, this is going to be the 4th episode coming up. But we're going to talk about web apps. We're going to talk about hardware hackers. We're just keeping with different topics all the time. So that's what makes it fun, and we keep it from a positive perspective.
Yeah,
so
love to hear it. I'm gonna check it out as well. I haven't heard any of the episodes yet, but I'm definitely gonna add that. So I wanted to just check in on one more thing in regards to this thing called SECBSD, because I know you were telling me that that's something that you're a part of. I'm gonna be honest. I mean, honesty is an important thing. I had never heard of it, didn't know what it was. I'll say it on the air. I don't care. I'm not afraid. Now I want to know, though. I want to learn. I want you to teach me a little bit about SECBSD, because I know Kali Linux. Everybody kind of knows that, but even I can't remember what it was called before that. Backtrack, right? Backtrack.
Yeah,
is that what it was
Backtrack.
before?
Yes.
Yeah, but I've never heard of SECBSD. So tell us a little bit about that project and kind of what it would be useful for.
So with SECBSD, the idea came about in like November 2019, right? So we had all these different distros out there that you had Pen 2. And of course, Backtrack, which turned into Kali Linux. And I think there was Arch Linux, right? Linux. And then for the BSD community, there was nothing. So we were looking at it from a standpoint like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to have like a BSD-based pen test distro? So we were throwing names around and came up with SECBSD, right? So it's actually 9 of us now that are actually working on a project. It's 100% open source. And it's at secbsd.org if you want to check it out. It's 100% open source. It's volunteer, and it's a pen test distro for like the BSD community. So we're taking some of the tools, like porting a lot of the tools that are in Kali over to the BSD side of the house as well too. Now we're probably not going to have as many tools as Kali, because we just kind of, pick a few, because I mean Kali has a lot of tools, so. And, you have a certain amount that kind of do the same thing. So we're kind of like pretty much just like doing this as we go. If anybody wants to volunteer, they're perfectly free to do that. Again, it's just more so just wanted to have just that pen test distro for the BSD community. So it's kind of our way of like contributing, kind of like how the old way is, you create a project, you contribute to the community works with it, or they'll tell you, hey, you can make this better by doing this, or they actually fix bugs. So we're just trying to bring it back to that kind of retro way, if that makes sense. So that's where SECBSD actually comes from, is wanting to have a pen test distro in the BSD community.
Really cool. Well, Charles, we really appreciate you coming and visiting with us today, and it's just a lot of fun. Just hearing about how positive you are, and I want to check out your podcast as well, and check out some of the videos. I haven't seen them. I don't think I've at least seen one, but I want to see some more. I want to see the T-shirts.
Yes,
because I'm thinking of all the T-shirts I have, and they're nowhere near the numbers that you have. I keep thinking, why do I have all these T-shirts? But here's somebody who's taking advantage of it, so that's fantastic.
And just having fun with it. I'm and again, once again, truly honored to be on the show today. This is awesome. Like I've been listening to you guys for a while, so I'm really enjoyed this.
Excellent. Well, for our listeners, what would you say a call to action for our audience? What are some things that they could take away today from this podcast and to help them? What do you think?
I would say, honestly, give it whatever it is that you want to do, whether it's web app security, whether it's network security, wireless, whatever, or even DevSecOps. Get out there and just go do it. Even if it's just taking the first step and just asking the question. That's a step towards the right direction. Hey, how do I do this? I guarantee you there's someone out there that's willing to help you. If you're trying to help yourself, there's going to be somebody out there that are going to point you in that direction and actually help you. So I want you to just take the first step. That's what I challenge you to do today. Take the first step towards your goals, your dreams, and greatness.
Excellent. Great advice. Well, again, Charles, thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
All right. Well, thank you for having me.